The most powerful generals in China are vanishing. One by one, disappearing into prison cells they will never leave. Over the past 2 years, Xi Jinping has been purging his own military. The group that controls China's armed forces, the Central Military Commission, is supposed to have 7 members. It's now down to 2, including Xi Jinping himself. But the latest purge crossed a line no one expected. For over a decade, one man had been Xi's right hand in the military, second in power only to himself. If anyone in the system was untouchable, it was General Zhang Youxia. On January 24th, the Defense Ministry announced that General Zhang is under investigation for corruption. In China's system, once you're under investigation, your fate is already sealed. So what's happening inside China's military? Is Xi Jinping losing control or tightening his grip so hard that no one is safe? And what does this mean for Taiwan? Here's the official explanation of what happened. Zhang Youxia and another general Liu Zhenli were accused of corruption and serious violations of discipline and law. The official military newspaper, the PLA Daily, went further. It accused them of having trampled on and undermined Xi Jinping's absolute authority over the military. That's really harsh language. In China's system, undermining the president's authority is about as serious as it gets. But here's what doesn't make sense. Many people thought that Zhang Youxia wasn't some rival. He didn't seem to be the threat that Xi Jinping needed to neutralize. In fact, to outsiders, he was Xi Jinping's man. Their fathers were revolutionary comrades who fought together in the civil war that brought the communists to power in 1949. Their sons grew up in that world of Communist Party royalty, the so-called princelings, whose families had been there from the beginning. In a system where trust is rare, this bond went back generations, and Xi Jinping showed that trust. In 2022, General Zhang hit the mandatory retirement age. In China's system, age limits are usually enforced really strictly. When you hit 68, you're out. It's one of the few rules that really sticks because it keeps anyone from accumulating too much power. Xi Jinping made an exception for General Zhang and kept him on. That almost never happens. It was Xi signaling to everyone in the system, this man is untouchable and he is my guy. So if Xi trusted Zhang enough to break the rules for him, why destroy him now? That's the real question, and the official explanation of corruption doesn't come close to answering it. Here's what analysts think is actually happening, starting with what made Zhang different from almost every other general in China's military. He has actually been in combat. In 1979, China fought a brief but bloody war against Vietnam. Tens of thousands died on both sides. Zhang Youxia was there, fighting on the front lines. That might sound like ancient history, but here's the thing. China's military hasn't fought a major war since then. Almost no one in today's senior leadership has ever been shot at. They've trained, they've studied, they've run their military exercises, but they've never had to make real decisions with real bullets flying. Well, Zhang had. And in a military that loves showing off its hardware but has never actually used it in a real war, that kind of experience gave him something almost no one else had: the credibility to push back. And apparently, he did. President Xi has been pushing the military hard to modernize. In fact, reports say that he wants the People's Liberation Army ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. That's the 100th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army, and it has huge symbolic importance for him. General Zhang, drawing on his combat experience, apparently felt that timeline was too aggressive. He reportedly wanted to aim for full operational readiness by 2025 instead. His view was simple: China needed more time to get things right. Again, this is all speculation from analysts online. Given the opaque nature of China's political situation, we don't know the real truth. But in any normal military, what Zhang allegedly did was just his job. A senior officer giving an honest assessment of what's achievable. But China under Xi Jinping isn't normal. Telling the leader his timeline is unrealistic isn't seen as professional advice. Is seen as defiance. Now, there have been wilder rumors. The Wall Street Journal reported allegations that Zhang leaked nuclear secrets to the Americans. Some sources even claim he was planning a coup. I'll be honest with you, there's no solid evidence for either of this. Zhang rarely travelled abroad, and his most recent meeting with an American official was with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Beijing in 2024 for official talks. He had visited the US once before in 2012 as part of a larger military delegation, not exactly places to secretly hand off nuclear secrets in some parking lot. But there's a darker explanation that goes beyond any single policy disagreement. Xi Jinping has been in power for over 13 years now. And in that time, he systematically removed almost everyone who could potentially challenge him. Rivals, ambitious officials, alternative power centers, all gone. Zhang was one of the last people standing with real independent influence. He had credibility from combat, networks built over decades. Being the number 2 in the military, he had power that didn't depend entirely on Xi Jinping's favor. Even if Zhang was completely loyal, the fact that he had that much influence may have been the problem, not because he would move against Xi Jinping, but because, theoretically, he could. Some experts compare this to how Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, operated. First, you eliminate your enemies. Then, you eliminate anyone who could theoretically become a threat, even if they've never shown any sign of disloyalty. And here's a dark irony. Xi Jinping's own father was purged under the reign of Mao Zedong decades earlier for exactly this kind of paranoid logic. Accused of disloyalty despite being a committed revolutionary, the young Xi Jinping grew up watching his own family's destruction. He knows exactly how this playbook works, and now he's running it himself. Zhang Youxia isn't an isolated case. He's just the most dramatic example of something that's been happening for years. Since Xi Jinping took power, he's purged more senior military officials than any Chinese leader since Mao Zedong in the 50s and 60s. Defense Minister Li Shangfu was removed in October 2023. The entire leadership of the Rocket Force, the branch that controls China's nuclear weapons, was also purged in 2023. Think about that for a second. The people responsible for the arsenal that's supposed to deter the United States were removed and replaced. Then came October 2025. General He Weidong, the other vice chairman of the military commission, was expelled. So was Admiral Miao Hua, the head of political work for the entire military. Zhang Youxia survived that round of purging in October last year, but 3 months later, right now, he and Liu Zhenli, another general who was chief of staff, are now gone. The Central Military Commission now has just 2 members left out of the original 7. So what does this actually mean for China's military? I want to be careful here because it's easy to jump to dramatic conclusions. This doesn't mean the military is falling apart. Just weeks after the October purge, in late December, the Chinese military ran a major exercise around Taiwan with ships, aircraft, coordinated operations, so its whole command structure is still working. But something important has changed at the top. When you watch your colleagues and superiors get purged one after another, you learn a lesson fast. Don't disagree. Don't bring bad news. Just tell the boss what he wants to hear. This is what analysts call the yes man problem. Without people like General Zhang who could give Xi Jinping honest assessments, the quality of information reaching the top gets worse. If Xi Jinping asks whether the military can pull off an operation like an invasion of Taiwan, and everyone's too scared to say, actually we're not ready for that, you end up with decisions based on fantasy instead of reality. And there's also a practical question worth asking. Who even wants these top military jobs now? If you've just watched the defense minister, the rocket force commanders, and the vice chairman all get purged and sent to prison, would you be eager to take their place? The officers who might be next in line have watched their mentors and colleagues get destroyed. The lesson is brutal but clear. The safest career move is to keep your head down, shut up, and salute. That's not how you build a confident, capable military leadership. And their internal dysfunction is about to collide with the most dangerous flashpoint in the world. So what does this all mean for Taiwan? In the short term, these purges probably make a major military move less likely. You don't launch the most complex invasion in modern history When you have just gutted your command structure, new leaders need time to settle in, build trust, figure out how to work together. There's also an irony here. If Zhang Youxia was removed partly because he disagreed with the 2027 Taiwan invasion deadline, then Xi Jinping just got rid of the person who was supposed to make the deadline happen in the first place. That doesn't exactly speed things up. But here's where it gets interesting. The fact that Xi Jinping is willing to gut his own military leadership tells you something. It suggests that he feels pretty secure about the external environment right now. If Xi Jinping thought the crisis with Taiwan or the US was coming soon, would he really be purging his top generals? You don't fire your commanders right before a war. He thinks he has time. The real question is whether he's right. When you look at the broader picture, there are reasons for Beijing to feel comfortable. The Trump administration doesn't seem as focused on Taiwan as previous ones. Taiwan's president, Lai Ching-te, is politically weakened, with his approval ratings dropping. Meanwhile, the opposition party, which favors closer ties with Beijing, is gaining ground. The next Taiwan election is in 2028. That's a date worth watching. Here's the basic split in Taiwan's politics. The current ruling party, the DPP, under President Lai Ching-te, wants to maintain separation from China. But the opposition, the KMT, has historically favored engagement with Beijing. If they win in 2028, the whole dynamic shifts. From Beijing's perspective, a friendly government in Taipei might be open to negotiations the current administration would never accept. Why raise the enormous cost of an invasion when you might get what you want through politics? So Xi Jinping is betting he can afford to clean house right now while the external situation stays manageable. But here's where it gets dangerous. The real risk isn't a planned invasion. It's a wider miscalculation. The yes man problem means that Xi Jinping might be getting overly rosy assessments of what the military can actually do. If he orders an operation believing it will succeed, and everyone around him is too scared to point out the problems, things could go very wrong very fast. And there's one more risk that most people aren't thinking about. Xi Jinping is 72 years old, and he's eliminated almost everyone who could succeed him. So what happens when he's gone? Well, maybe that's why he seems to want immortality. In a normal political system, there will be clear successors, established processes, someone waiting in the wings who's been groomed for leadership. In Xi Jinping's China, he's dismantled anything that could serve as an alternative center of power. There's no obvious successor, no clear processes for transition, just Xi Jinping at the top and a bunch of terrified officials beneath him. The last time China faced a sudden leadership crisis was when Mao Zedong died in 1976. What followed was chaos. Mao's wife and her allies tried to seize power. They were eventually arrested within weeks. But the entire direction of the country flipped almost overnight. It took years for the system to stabilize. Now imagine that kind of instability, but in a China with nuclear weapons, the world's largest military, and territorial disputes with all of its neighbors. So who takes over? Who has the credibility and the relationships to hold the system together? Who controls the military during a messy transition? No one knows, and that uncertainty isn't just China's problem, it's everyone's. Whatever actually happened to China's top generals, the result is clear. Xi Jinping has built a system where loyalty is everything, where even your closest ally can be discarded, where the safest strategy is to tell the leader what he wants to hear and hope you survive. He's more powerful than ever, but he's also more alone than ever. And the question now is what this means for Taiwan. But China's approach for potential invasion isn't what most people assume. It's not necessarily a D-Day style beach invasion with thousands of ships. There's a different scenario that's arguably already underway, and most people don't understand it. I break down exactly what that looks like in this video right here.